Good Tuesday afternoon to you. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. Plenty of Browns football to talk about. Let's get right to it. Browns arriving in Berea and getting ready for some organized team activities. A good look. Donovan Peoples-Jones, Willie Harvey. You see the snow as the Browns filing into Berea for the team activities. Wyatt Teller getting there. There's Kareem Hunt. John Johnson III, he's a veteran of the snow now, throwing a little snowball. And Jakeem Grant from the Dolphins entering. Not exactly looking like he's thrilled with the snow on the ground. One guy who is not at the organized team activities, to no surprise, Baker Mayfield. Let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. And Mary Kay, the fact that Baker's not here, no surprise whatsoever. If he's still on the roster come minicamp and those mandatory things, it's a little different.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, this is the voluntary part of the conditioning program. The OTAs, the organized team activities, don't even get started actually for a couple of weeks. So this is just the part where they're mostly conditioning, working out, ramping up, and getting back into some football activity. No Baker Mayfield, as you mentioned. In addition to the fact that he's on the trading block, he also is still rehabbing his shoulder, and then he's going to be a little busy this weekend because his statue will be unveiled at Oklahoma at the spring game. And so a lot of things kind of came together to lead him to not be here today.
Two guys that are there that we didn't see the video of, Amari Cooper and Deshaun Watson. Is it any surprise that a lot of the new guys have come here just to get the training staff and everybody, the strength and conditioning staff, to get a look at them and kind of get the program rolling?
No surprise about that. Kevin Stefanski told us at the owners' meetings last month that Deshaun Watson would be front and center for the start of the offseason program on April 19th, and he is, in fact, here today. As you mentioned, Amari Cooper is also here today, and that's really good because Kevin Stefanski has not had an offseason program yet with his offense. The first year, it was basically eliminated, the in-person program, because of COVID-19. Last year, the players, mostly the offensive players, really abided by J.C. Tretter's edict to not show up for the offseason program because it is voluntary. So Kevin Stefanski had to deal with that last season, and I do think it somewhat had an impact on those guys trying to be up and running by the time the season started. There were a lot of things that, that kind of got in the way of that. So he's happy everybody's here, and it looks like they're going to be ready to go.
Another thing that has happened since last time we talked to you happened just yesterday. That 5-year extension for Denzel Ward did in fact happen. It is $100.5 million over 5 years, making him the highest paid cornerback in the NFL, 71.25 of it guaranteed. So he's an elite company, and with good reason. The production matches that contract. You see the other thing that has happened is with that signing, they have spread out his cap number for this year. So the Browns will save over $8 million by spreading out that extension and doing the cap magic. He now only counts 5.035, so they save $8.25 million. That will be very important as they try to get Jadeveon Clowney under contract. They may have to eat part of Baker Mayfield. All those things factor into what's coming up next.
Well, this is what happens when you have really brilliant people running the cap in Berea. I mean, they lowered Deshaun Watson's cap number all the way down to $10 million. They lowered Amari Cooper's cap down to $5 million, and now you can see they've got Denzel's down to $5 million. So those three players, even though they will be making very big money and got very big bonuses and are very happy, they are a combined $20 million against the cap this year. That leaves roster flexibility for everybody else this year, and it is a good time, as you mentioned, to sign some other guys. They have now the opportunity to still go out and sign a Jadeveon Clowney if they so choose, to sign a Jarvis Landry, or even a Jerry Hughes.
The other thing that is important to note, Denzel Ward has been one of the best in coverage since 2018. Matter of fact, there's only two guys who have been better than him. Stephon Gilmore, Xavier Howard. and then Denzel Ward. That is completion rate percentage when targeted since 2018. So Ward kind of backing up the idea that he is a lockdown and shutdown corner.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you could see in the second half of last season, he really came on strong, got off to a little bit of a rocky start, but then was really locking it down again by the second half of last season, living up to his number 4 overall status and making his second Pro Bowl. So he earned this. It's a feel-good story for Cleveland. He's a hometown young man. And, they needed some really good news out of that 2018 class.
So the other thing that has come out recently, the NFL is investigating the Browns for quote-unquote tanking back in the Hue Jackson era. And the reason for that is Hue Jackson's comments that he was incentivized to lose, kind of like Brian Flores. Is there any reason at all to be concerned about that from the Browns' perspective?
No, and the news here wasn't the fact that they opened an investigation. That's a bit of a misnomer. That happened back in February. So the notion that they just all of a sudden started looking into this is inaccurate. What they are close to doing is wrapping up their investigation. And I think the Browns feel pretty good about the fact that they will be found to have done nothing wrong in this regard. They really did try to increase their cap space and maximize their draft picks. But in terms of pay to tank, that never happened. And even Hue Jackson retracted those statements shortly after they were made in February. So I think it will all come together or come out in the wash.
Yeah, and when you look at it, the second half of that last season, Greg Williams with the same roster kind of flipped it. He went 5-3. With basically the same roster that Hue Jackson was 2-5-1 with. So, and again, that from Daryl Ryder kind of pointing that out. Just a lot of it had to do with just the X's and O's and the way that team was being coached, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, there were a lot of things that transpired in those couple of years, and suffice it to say that it was, it was a bad match of putting people together. Sashi Brown and Hue Jackson really didn't belong together per se. There were clashes in philosophy, clashes in personality, and it just did not work. And that's why you had a lot of errant quarterback evaluations in those couple of years. At that time in 2017, they really didn't know what they were looking at in terms of Deshaun Watson back then, or even Patrick Mahomes. And they had Mitchell Trubisky as their first quarterback on the board in 2017. And therefore they passed on both Patrick and Deshaun at number 1, and they didn't try to trade up to get Patrick, and they did not draft Deshaun at number 12. So that's what happens when you don't put it together right. And now the Browns are kind of, trying to make good on all of that.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, just about how good this Browns team is. We'll also find out about the wide receiving core. Mary Kay's thoughts on the wide receiver. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns football with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns team as they gear up for 2022.
Yes, this is for the city of Cleveland. I'm from Las Vegas. I don't think you guys know what you got out there. The betting line has moved so much from Cleveland to win the Super Bowl. I've never seen it like that in the 20 years I've been out here. I'm from Ohio. Go Browns, Super Bowl bound.
All right. As always, we appreciate all of our voicemails. And to the voicemailer's point, Mary Kay, they went from plus 4,000 to plus 1,700 with a couple of the moves that they made. So, and I guess rightly so, if you have a quarterback that is elite, people tend to think of you as a Super Bowl contender.
Absolutely. That makes all the difference in the world. And that is why 100% right now, the Browns are getting the respect like that in Vegas, and they're kind of the talk of the NFL in a lot of ways. There's so much competition, obviously, in the AFC, and it's not going to be easy. I mean, just look at the AFC West quarterbacks alone. But this puts the Browns right up there with everybody else in the AFC when it comes to contending for a Super Bowl. And they've added a lot of other pieces, and they should be right up there with everybody, depending on the suspension this season for Deshaun Watson.
And again, nobody has any idea if that suspension will happen this year, if it will be 4 games, 6 games, 8. Nobody really has a firm grasp of that. Have you heard anything at all involving that?
No, that the only thing that I can say right now is that the investigation is ongoing, and I still think they have plenty of work to do. As of last month, when I asked Roger Goodell, they had only talked to 10 of the 24 accusers at that point, and they had plans to talk to more. So it could take a little while.
All right. This is from one of your Hey Mary Kay articles. And do you think Deshaun Watson will make the wide receiving group better?
Absolutely, 100% he will. I think if you look at all of those guys last year, none of them played up to their potential. You had Jarvis Landry, who really struggled. Donovan Peoples-Jones towards the end of the season, you could see that he was really having a difficult time of it. Anthony Schwartz did not play up to his potential all year long. Same thing with David Njoku and Austin Hooper. Nobody that was a pass catcher in a Cleveland Browns uniform really was able to have the kind of season that they're capable of. And that was in part because Baker Mayfield was injured, because he had the harness on, because he just was not himself. So with a healthy Deshaun Watson and a significant upgrade in talent in Deshaun, all of these guys should fare much, much better. I think, you can even look at some of those young guys like Donovan Peoples-Jones and Anthony Schwartz and expect them to really step it up. People started to wonder, does Anthony Schwartz really have it? Can this guy catch the ball? Can he do this? Can he do that? And now I think we're going to find out if it was in part because of Baker Mayfield. I think it was. And I think a lot of these guys are going to look a lot better.
What about Amari Cooper? How does he figure into that? And how good of he's obviously a number one. How good of a number one is he, do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what, Amari Cooper has played with some really good quarterbacks in his career. And I can only imagine that when he first discovered that he was getting traded to Cleveland and that he was going to be getting the ball from Baker Mayfield, he probably had some consternation about that, because we saw what happened with Odell Beckham Jr. That's another one. I mean, if you look at Odell and what he was able to accomplish here, and then what he did when he left here and went on to the Rams, you could see that, it just transformed him. So, I think that Amari Cooper probably had to be pretty happy when he went first from Derek Carr, then to Dak Prescott, and now to Deshaun Watson. So, I think those two guys are going to be an incredible battery together. I think it will rival Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. I think those guys are going to be dynamite together.
And the other thing to keep in mind, Nick Chubb and that offensive line give both of them. And now Cooper did have Ezekiel Elliott, but that adds to your downfield passing game when you have a running game and an offensive line like the Browns.
Yes, absolutely. They've got all the pieces, and as we had been saying for quite some time, it was a plug and play offense. It really just needed an elite quarterback popped in there, because for the most part, they've got the offensive line, they've got the running game, they've got some of the other pieces. I still think they need at least one more really good receiver, but for the most part, this was a Super Bowl ready offense.
All right, when you look at some areas of concern, I would imagine the defensive line is one of them. As we sit here, how much work do you think Andrew Berry is trying to do to that defensive line, and what do you think he's looking to do?
Well, they added a couple of pieces yesterday, but those were really just mostly depth guys in Sheldon Day and Stephen Weatherly. And those guys, we're talking about a defensive tackle in Day and an end in Weatherly. But they're still looking at some other guys. Jadeveon Clowney is still on the radar. And as I mentioned earlier, Jerry Hughes is also on the radar from the Buffalo Bills. He's still out there. He's a free agent. So these are kind of a couple of guys to look at. And then they have done extensive work on the edge rushers in this draft, and it's pretty deep. And I still think you can get one at number 44. So that's definitely a position to keep an eye on.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we will talk a little bit about Baker Mayfield, when, where he might be traded, and what the future holds for Baker. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Thanks for buying a fishing license. I want you to picture all the great things this simple purchase does. Like building public boat ramps, keeping local waters clean, and maintaining a healthy fish population.
What's Mom doing?
When you buy a fishing license, you do a lot. Every dollar protects and maintains your local waterways for future generations to enjoy. Visit takemefishing.org.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Dan Orlovsky talked about what he, a known Baker Mayfield supporter, would like to see from Mayfield going forward. This is from ESPN's NFL Live.
I'm a Baker guy. I have been since the moment he came into this league. What I want from Baker Mayfield from this moment moving forward is to be more like Jameis Winston. I go back to 2 years ago, the offseason, when Jameis Winston, it was obvious Tom Brady had gone to Tampa Bay and he was going to find a new home. And Jameis had talked about not wanting to go to the most money, not wanting or needing to go to a place where he had to be the starting quarterback, to go to a place that he could develop for his career, to go to a place that he was going to be able to learn from somebody else, that he was humbled from his experience in some of the downfalls in Tampa Bay. And that's what I want to hear from Baker. You don't have to change who you are. You can still be that chip on your shoulder, walk on from both Texas Tech and Oklahoma, but also realize and be honest about the reality that there's some parts of your personality that are abrasive in NFL locker rooms, and they haven't been embraced by players. The quicker he does that, the more likely he can get back to being a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Mary Kay Cabot, do you see Baker Mayfield doing that? That seems outside of his personality right now. Just as in reacting to that.
Well, I mean, I think Baker is ready to change some things about himself. I think you could tell when you listen to that YNK podcast that he was saying that he probably will have to do some things a little bit differently, and he's going to be himself and whatnot. But I do think that, he's not going to rush right in and take over the leadership role. I think he's going to probably get the lay of the land in his new home and, just kind of scope things out a little bit and see where he can insert himself from a leadership standpoint and where he needs to just hang back a little bit until he figures out who's who and what's what and what the structure is like in the locker room that he's going to. And I think that's very important because he did rub a few people the wrong way. And this isn't college anymore. What played really well in college doesn't necessarily always play well in the NFL. I think, a lot of guys are a lot more mature than that at this point. And I think he is going to have to try a little bit of a different technique.
Where do you think the disconnect came between him and the Browns? Was that it? Do you think that or where do you think the disconnect came?
Well, there were a lot of disconnects between the Browns and Baker Mayfield along the way. And those had to do with the fact that he constantly had turnover, constantly had a change in coaching staff and GM and coordinators. So that was a big part of it. But the most recent disconnect between Baker and the Browns came with the messaging over what the intentions were for the 2022 season. And they were trying to say, yeah, we fully expect you to be our quarterback. Of course, that doesn't mean that we're not going to look around. And I think Baker and his camp really sort of believed or heard that, hey, you know what? You're our guy for 2022. And we really don't believe that we are going to end up with another quarterback. I don't think the Browns thought so either. I don't think they really believed they were going to be able to upgrade. And they only wanted a certain caliber of quarterback. They were not going to go for the Mitch Trubisky's and the Jimmy Garoppolos. They were aiming for the Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers level. They didn't think they would be able to attain it. And when they did, everything changed.
The other thing, you reported over the weekend that the Panthers were a possible destination, and what do you think of that? And then, you get a wide receiver that's a veteran saying no, and that's a whole nother can of worms. But let's get into that a little bit about the Panthers being a possible destination.
Yeah, I mean, it seems as though as they get closer and closer to the draft that there hasn't been much of a market for Baker Mayfield. But there is one team right now that can get very interested, and that's the Panthers. They have the best chance to land him in a trade at the moment, and it makes a lot of sense. Right now they have Sam Darnold as their starting quarterback, and they're looking at the young guys. They've spent a lot of time on Kenny Pickett. They've spent a lot of time on Malik Willis. But, they can plug Baker Mayfield in there and hit the ground running, and they can start winning right away with Baker Mayfield. He's better than Sam Darnold. He's got more victories under his belt. He's taken a team to the playoffs. He's gone 11-5. And so I do think that it would be a good move for them. As you mentioned, Robbie Anderson, their second leading receiver, wants no part of it, and he's made no bones about that. And if it does happen, they're going to have to cross that hurdle because it will be a bit awkward.
And it's important to note, Robbie Anderson has played with Sam Darnold not only in Carolina but in New York with the Jets. So that there's that dynamic going. But it's just very strange to hear a guy that you would be working with so closely come out that adamantly against it. That surprised me.
Yeah, because you may have backed yourself into a corner, and he just might have no choice. And from everything that I've been told, there is a decent chance he could land with the Panthers. So this is something these guys are going to have to work through, and you just have to be careful about what kind of bridges you burn in that regard.
So let's check in about the timing of this. Diana Rossini from ESPN's Get Up had this to say about any potential Baker Mayfield trade.
The sense I was getting just a few weeks ago was that the Carolina Panthers had zero interest in Baker Mayfield, and Baker Mayfield kind of had zero interest in the Panthers. And now it seems that has changed a bit. But in terms of when we could see actual movement, I was told from a Panther source, this is not going to go down before the draft. That's if they were to trade for Baker Mayfield. Remember, there's a lot that goes into this in terms of Baker's contract. He's owed roughly $19 million, right? And that's something that the Cleveland Browns really do not want to have to pay at all. So it's really to come down to what team is going to be willing to take on that deal. And as of right now, from the sources I've talked to around the league, there isn't a team that wants to take on that contract.
So, Mary Kay, when you think of that, is it likely to happen if a Baker Mayfield trade happens? Is it likely to be after the draft when Carolina or whomever has a better idea? Did we get quarterback X? Did we get quarterback Y in the draft? Or could it happen before?
It possibly could happen before, but it'll probably happen somewhere around draft weekend if it's going to happen. As you mentioned, they still have to work through the contract. And if they do end up with a Kenny Pickett or a Malik Willis or one of those quarterbacks, then they have to decide, do they just want to try to go with Sam Darnold and their rookie, or do they want to bring in what they believe would be more of a surefire starter? So it probably is unlikely to happen before the draft, possibly could happen during or right after.
So I guess the next question is, and I know you've written an article on this, what happens if they don't find a deal for Baker Mayfield?
If they don't find a deal for Baker Mayfield, it kind of goes back to what Andrew Berry was saying at the NFL annual meeting. They will stick with Baker Mayfield, and they'll keep him on the roster for quarterback depth. Will it be awkward? Sure, it'll be awkward. It'll be weird. But, they are not going to make a suboptimal deal for themselves. They're not going to do something just to give Baker Mayfield a new home and let him move on and close the chapter on this saga. They will keep him around if necessary. And then this is part of what I wrote the other day. This is not going to be a situation where it was like with Deshaun Watson, where he was not around the team, he wasn't practicing, he wasn't in meetings. It's not going to be like that. Baker Mayfield will be treated just like everybody else on the roster, and he will be expected to show up, to go out there, to take reps, to practice, and to be a productive part of the football team.
Is the thought behind that then, I mean, it's the NFL. Quarterbacks get injured all the time. If you're keeping him around for depth, it's because at some point his value is going to go up because he is a guy that started a bunch of games and he's won a playoff game. There aren't many guys that will be available that have won an NFL playoff game.
Right, and look, they got into their depth last year. And if Deshaun Watson is suspended for how many ever games, and we don't know, 4 games, 6 games, whatever that could possibly be. And then let's say what happens if Jacoby Brissett gets hurt? Then you're looking at Josh Dobbs after that. Well, if you've got Baker Mayfield on the roster and he can go out and win some football games for you, maybe you go that route instead. So stranger things have happened, and it's not what anybody really wants, and it's not ideal, and it could be awkward. But it would also be an opportunity for Baker Mayfield to put some good tape out there and to show what he's all about. So anything can happen this year.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason about the Browns' recent signing and what lies ahead. We'll also take a look at some prospects that could be on the Browns' draft list. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns' next move.
Go Browns. Hello, gentlemen. This is Keith calling from Columbus, Ohio once again. I called a week or so ago about the Denzel situation and how I felt like they need to keep him, and how Jamar Chase saying that he is one of the best DBs, toughest one he said he faced since he's been in the league. He's only been there a year, but he's one of the top receivers. My point is, I'm just so happy that they paid him. And so let's move forward. Let's keep it pushing. They're moving in the right direction. They're getting the core players. Now we just need to get Clowney, and we'll figure it out from there. Go Browns.
All right, as always, we appreciate all of the voicemails. We'll get to Clowney in a minute. Mary Kay, what about the job they have done locking up their young talent? So they've identified the talent, and now they have this young talent that's going to be with the franchise, if they so desire, for the next several years.
Yes, Denzel Ward is under contract through 2027. He has mentioned that he would like to finish his career here, and wouldn't it be great for him and for Browns fans if he could punctuate that with a Super Bowl victory? But yes, they have gotten most of their core key players under long-term contract. Most of the big work is done now. They've gotten Miles done. They've gotten Deshaun done. They've gotten Denzel, Nick Chubb, Wyatt Teller, Joel Bitonio, one right after another they have done. So they have the core pieces all together. They still have room to add a few more, and they've done a tremendous job of managing the cap.
The other thing is and this is my perception, and you're much closer and have much more focus on it. Andrew Berry in this front office seems to be very forward-thinking with the cap, and that's the way you stay ahead of the cap. When you're playing catch-up with the cap is when you get into the situation where you're going to lose players you don't want to lose. This cap is going to go up significantly as sports wagering dollars come into it, as more of the broadcast rights and streaming rights come into it. The contracts that look like they're big deals right now always look like they're bargains come 3 or 4 years down the road.
Well, and sometimes it doesn't even take that long. I mean, if you look at Amari Cooper's deal, which is about $20 million a year, well, they acquired Amari Cooper in an offseason in which wide receiver salaries have skyrocketed. And so, that doesn't look like that much money anymore. And same thing with Denzel. Even though it was his turn to become the next highest paid cornerback in the NFL, those salaries are going to be going up, and that will probably age pretty well. And he's going to, look, just paid right about where he should be. But somebody's going to come along, in the next couple of months and top what he's making. So you're right. The numbers will continue to escalate, and the Browns will be right at the forefront.
All right, and again, you wrote an article about this, so I want to get your thoughts on it. Browns and Jadeveon Clowney have mutual interests. I know you don't have any hard thing, a gut feeling. Do you think Clowney will be back with the Browns?
I think it could go either way. I think some of it will depend on what happens in the draft. If they end up with one or two pass rushers that they really like, and they also do have Chase Winovich, but if they end up with someone that they really like, then they might be a little bit less inclined to re-sign Jadeveon Clowney. But I know he'd like to be back. I know the Browns would like to have him. It's kind of there for the taking. And I think they're just going to wait and see what happens over the next 9 days.
All right. I'm going to ask you the same question about Jarvis Landry. Again, I know you don't have any sources or any, just a gut feeling with Jarvis.
Well, I do have sources. And
I mean on this specifically.
On all of these things, I do, on Jadeveon and Jarvis. And in fact, Jarvis's agent did tell me that there is mutual interest between the two entities. And that's another one of those things where I think it probably will go until after the draft, and they'll kind of see what happens and what they still need or want after the draft.
All right, let's go and turn our attention to edge rushers. Obviously, an area that the Browns, need to talk about. I know you talked a little bit about these guys earlier. Take us through edge rushers and who makes sense, and maybe even some names that you think, if they're there at 44, would intrigue the Browns.
Well, there are a lot of guys that could be there at number 44 for the Browns. There's probably 4 or 5 different edge rushers that could be there, and so that's definitely something to keep an eye on. We don't know exactly who those guys are going to be yet, but there's the Nick Bonitos and the David Ohabos and those kinds of guys should be there. So they should have something to choose from right there at number 44 without having to trade up. I think they can find somebody that they like. So yeah, there's that. And then there's Jadeveon and there's Jerry Hughes, and somehow they will find someone to complement Miles who can rush the passer.
How important is that to get that guy so that it kind of spreads out the way they're going to try to attack Myles Garrett?
I think it's important. I think it's definitely important to take some of that heat off of Myles. I think it's a major reason why he was able to get 16 sacks last year and why he was one of the most formidable pass rushers in the NFL. Really helped to have Jadeveon on that other side. So hopefully they'll wrap up Jadeveon or sign a Jerry or someone else and draft really well over there to kind of complement Myles and get this pressure rolling.
All right, so ESPN, Mel Kiper, Todd McShay did a 3-round mock draft. Let's take a look at some of the picks for the Browns. So 44, they have the Browns going with Travis Jones, defensive tackle. You see 6'4", 325. He also has this is going to sound silly, he looks quick on the video that I've seen, and a 6'4", 325 guy in the middle of a defensive line that looks quick is a good thing. What are your thoughts on Jones from what you've heard about him?
Well, they could definitely use an upgrade at defensive tackle. Again, as I mentioned, they re-signed Sheldon Day. They also have Tommy Togiai and Jordan Elliott there. But it couldn't hurt to have a guy like this. As you mentioned, he's quick. He can rush from the middle, and that's important. And he probably has the versatility to bounce outside as well. So he's definitely somebody that would be a fit there for them at 44.
All right, we move on. And in the 3rd round, this particular mock draft has the Browns taking Khalil Shakur, wide receiver from Boise State. You see the numbers, and a lot of them from the slot, is a slot target, had over 1,000 yards for Boise State. What do you think of the Boise State wide receiver?
Got a lot of upside potential. As you mentioned, he can play in the slot. He's quick. He's shifty. He can do some of the things that Jarvis Landry did for them, which I think, again, is another reason why they're going to kind of take it easy and wait and see what happens in the draft before they decide whether or not they're going to sign Jarvis back. But he's more of a slot type of guy, but I think he would be another really good choice for them at 44 or 78.
All right, now at 99, they go tight end, and they say Isaiah Likely, tight end from Coastal Carolina. They point out David Njoku was franchise tagged. You see, he led the football bowl subdivision with it as far as touchdowns and receiving yards from the tight end position. Do you think they go tight end that early, given Njoku and Harrison Bryant?
They could, because, they love their tight ends in this offense. And I wouldn't put it past them at all. I mean, they lost Austin Hooper, and they would like to replace, I think, someone at that position. So it's definitely one to watch.
What do you, if you were handicapping, what are the odds that they're going at 44? Edge, interior, wide receiver, which is most likely? Or is it truly, one of those guys that Andrew Berry likes, he's gonna go with the guy he likes the best at one of those areas?
Yeah, you know what? Andrew Berry does not draft for need. So, if a receiver happens to be there at 44, that's great. But if it's another position that you might not think they need, he'll still draft that player. A lot of times the need does match up with the talent. So, you might end up with a receiver or a defensive end there at number 44, but they're not going to force it. That's how you end up with mediocre football players. So they will go with the absolute best player on the board at number 44.
Any chance at all that that Andrew Berry sees a guy that he likes falling and he goes up and gets him, similar to what he did with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah last year? Or do you think because the first-round pick is gone, they're kind of staying where they are?
Anything can happen, and they will go into it open-minded, of course, and we'll talk to Andrew Berry on Friday and know a little bit more about this. But at this point, I really don't see them climbing up very high into the first round unless something unforeseen happens. Now, perhaps they would move up maybe a little bit into the second round if they see something that they're afraid somebody's going to grab. But right now, I don't envision a climb up to the first round.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. As always, Mary Kay, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you read her pages, The Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, more Browns talk. Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily will join us talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns football. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily. Casey, the recent moves, the offseason moves that Andrew Berry has done, I know you wrote an article about this. What do they say?
It just, they've clearly identified they have a championship window. And they've done everything they can to maximize that window by retaining all of their homegrown talent through the prime of their careers. You know, just yesterday with Denzel, I mean, you're going to have Denzel under contract till he's 30. You couldn't ask for a better situation with a lockdown corner like that.
And I think that's one of the things that sometimes a lot of fans overlook. One of the reasons they put these age guardrails up for draftees is because that's what they want. You want that second 5-year contract to take you up to 30, because in the game of football, 30 is usually where guys start to decline.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, draft young, early talent identification, and then you have to negotiate properly in the proper windows, and that's exactly what they've done. And then you trade for Deshaun and even Amari Cooper, and you extend those players. So from right now until 2027, you have a clear championship window. Now you have to supplement that with draft picks and other frugal decisions, but I mean, they've set themselves up in a very favorable position by doing so.
Yeah, and you look at the key pieces, as you mentioned, the core is really good, and it's going to be here a while, which gives some stability. And when you talk about the Browns, stability hasn't been something we've been able to talk about very often.
No, we've been chasing it for over 20 years, and it's finally here. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, and kudos to Andrew Berry and that front office for getting it done. All right, 5 major issues still needing to be addressed by the Browns. This is from Dog Pound Daily. All right, number 1, kicking game. What do you think? How do you go out and go about getting it? And Chase McLaughlin will be back, but I would expect there to be competition. How important is getting that kicker?
I mean, it's very important, but like that's always a revolving door. I mean, look around the league. How many franchise kickers would you say there are outside of Justin Tucker? You're always going to be bringing people in. Right now, they got McLaughlin and Blewett. Those kind of both like camp legs. So what's going to happen is those two will compete. Some other guy will get cut from another team. They'll bring him in. It'll just be a revolving door until they get someone they feel like they can put faith in. But we're going to have this conversation year after year because there's not that many stable kickers. That's just the situation.
Yeah. And you know, Tampa Bay took one in the second round and ended up, he went in the league for 3 or 4 years. So that's, you just got to go find them. Just keep going through them until you find them. Number 2 on this is 5 things that need to be addressed. Wide receiver depth, that one's pretty critical.
Yeah, that's a genuine concern. Outside of Amari Cooper and DPJ, you know, you have no proven commodities that you can, you know, have faith in going forward. You're looking for Jakeem Grant, Anthony Schwartz, or Demetric Felton, at least 2 of those 3 to step up and fill complementary roles. And then you're going to have to, I think you're still going to end up with another veteran getting added to the mix, and then obviously a draft pick, at least one. And then you're going to have to let it sort itself out, but you got to bring more talent into the building, and people have to step up. And roles need to be clearly identified. You know, it would help if Felton took a huge step up in the slot. That would fill a very big need this team has. So until they get those roles, you know, allotted to people, it's going to be this kind of evolving thing underneath DPJ and Amari. And then if one of those 2 go down, the Browns could be in serious trouble.
Yeah, so those are wide receiver, another one. So another one that's every bit as critical, starting defensive end across from Myles Garrett, because you don't want Myles Garrett triple teamed. He's going to get double teamed. You don't want him triple teamed or quadruple teamed.
Yeah, and I think we all know the obvious answer to this for the season would be to get Clowney back. But they do need to get another young player in this building they can groom to be that guy opposite of Myles going forward. So we're not having this conversation year in and year out. And, you know, and waiting on Clowney can be, you know, tedious. We're still sitting here right now, and there's no guarantee if he does sign it's going to be before training, you know, the beginning of training camp. So they need to get another young player in here through the draft and groom them to be that guy opposite of Myles going forward.
And it looked like Tack McKinley was on his way to being that guy, and then the Achilles kind of threw that into mayhem. All right, Baker Mayfield dilemma is issue 4. We got one more. And what are your thoughts about the whole Baker Mayfield thing?
I mean, it's just really muddy. There's no clear exit right now. So, but it does the Browns no good to cut him. And people keep pointing to that. They owe him $18.9 whether they keep him or cut him. You just hold on to him. Eventually, a spot will open up in his quarterback musical chair game, and then that'll be the exit strategy. But until then, just hold fast and pray he takes another media exile because he is doing himself zero favors.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of like a game of poker. The time is not right just yet. There will be a time that it's right. It's just not here yet. And then this is probably the biggest one: defensive tackle concerns. I know they have young guys, but man, 2 young guys, that for a team that expects to contend, that's not the way you go on the defensive line.
Yeah, you got 4 under contract right now: Jordan Elliott, Tommy Togiai, Tavian Bryan, and now Sheldon Day. So I think the floor of your defensive tackle room is set. And with Day, you have a guy that has starting potential, spot duty wise, but they definitely need to get a proven commodity, and it's probably going to come via a 1-year rental. And I'm going to keep banging the table for Akeem Hicks until they sign him. But you need someone who can come in right away and be a stabilizing force. And then they also need to draft another. And they've been doing that. You know, you got Elliott in the 3rd round 2 years ago, Togiai in the 4th. They're going to keep doing that until people step forward and identify themselves as being people worthy of starting.
And it's important to note, you know, guys that are 3rd or 4th round picks are 3rd or 4th round picks for a reason. They're going to take time to develop. We haven't been in a situation where we can let guys develop as an organization before. So I'm not discounting Elliott and Togiai, but you're right. They got to take a step in the right direction, and pretty big years.
If Togiai had stayed in, he would probably have been a 2nd round pick this year. So we'll see if he made the prerequisite differences through the offseason and working on technique, and see if he can get there.
Yeah, and again, patience with young guys is the thing. All right, before we go to break, fascinated by an article you wrote. You wrote something: why the Browns should pass on David Ojabo, the really talented guy that likely a mid-1st round pick if he didn't tear his Achilles. Just your thoughts on why they should not draft Ojabo.
It's all the nature of the injury. Like, as fans, we've become numb to injuries. A player will tear his ACL, then 9 months later, he's on the field doing just fine. We almost treat him like high ankle sprains at this point, but the Achilles is a different beast altogether. And if you look at the nature of the position he plays, with all the lower body bending and torque that's needed to play that position, then you have 300-plus pound men exerting maximum force on you to stop you. He's going to miss at least a full season. And with the Achilles, it's not even the season you return; it's the season after. You see if they reach their full potential athletically again. And like torn Achilles, over 25% of the players don't even come back at all. A fraction of those actually, get back to where they were. So with someone like Ojabo, who's a raw physical talent, wasn't like he was a technician. He's going to have to get back physically before he can even begin to work on technique. And if you're using a 2nd round pick, you only have him for 4 years. That means you really only have 1 full year to decide whether he's going to be with your team going forward. Similar to the position we're in with Grant Delpit this coming year. We only have him for 2 more years. And the way the Browns work, they want to identify talent retention early. So you would have a really small window with Ojabo. And I would rather just go with someone like Drake Jackson or Cam Thomas if they're set on selecting an edge at 44.
Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We'll hear this caller wants to talk about Baker Mayfield. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Time to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Baker Mayfield.
I want to say Baker Mayfield was the best thing that ever happened to Cleveland. And I think we're all missing the point of what this guy did for Cleveland. You gave up a king's ransom for a guy that you just didn't trust. You should have trusted Baker. That guy overcame everything. That was a guy that overcame everything. And I think it's shame on Cleveland yet again. It's going to be another shame on Cleveland because he's going to go out and he's going to prove everybody wrong that they made a mistake. And I truly do think they made a mistake. So thank you. Bye.
As always, we appreciate all of the voicemails and your opinions. Casey, again, I think Baker Mayfield is just fine as an NFL quarterback. I don't think he's elite. I don't think he's the best thing that's ever happened to Cleveland. And the caller may be right. He may go on to have a pretty good career. I think Deshaun Watson is a clear upgrade at this point.
Well, absolutely. I think statements like that, like he brought the Browns out of the NFL basement, are insulting to players like Miles and Chubb and Ward, even Barry and Stefanski. Like, it was definitely a group effort that allowed the Browns to get to where they are. But it's a clear upgrade to take Watson over Baker. Watson's floor is literally higher than Baker's ceiling. The most yards Baker's ever thrown for in a season is 3,827. The least that Watson's ever thrown for is 3,852. You know, the most touchdowns Baker's ever thrown for is 27, and the least Watson's ever thrown for is 26. Baker's highest completion percentage for a single season is 62%. The lowest Watson's ever thrown for is 67%. I mean, it is a literally clear upgrade. And if you were to compare their best numbers to their best numbers, it is a washout. I mean, Deshaun Watson is a clear upgrade over Baker Mayfield, and the Browns did not make a mistake. And I wish Baker well wherever he goes. But that, to me, that's just foolishness.
Yeah, and again, I'm somebody that said you can win with Baker Mayfield. You just need a lot more around him. So I'm not in any way trashing Baker Mayfield. You also wrote another article about Baker finding a home with the Arizona Cardinals. Take us through that. I know Cliff Kingsbury kind of runs the offense that Baker has succeeded in at Oklahoma.
If you're just looking at potential landing spots, I mean, you have to take Arizona serious because Kyler Murray is the only person in this game that has leverage because he has Major League Baseball in his back pocket. He could literally take his ball and go home. So if Arizona were to decide they no longer want to be in the Kyler Murray game, they will find suitors. I promise you that. And then that opens up a spot. And if you're looking around at all the obtainable NFL quarterbacks, Baker would be the best for that particular situation. The familiarity, his skill set, you know, that'd be a perfect landing zone for him. And I know people will point to him and Kingsbury butting heads when they were at Texas Tech, which is true, that did happen, but this is a business, and it would behoove both those guys to be beyond the ego and make it work because they could. And you can't tell me that Baker Mayfield is not better than a 2022 Colt McCoy or Trace McSorley. You know, it'd be a perfect upgrade for them and a way cheaper option than extending Kyler if they wanted to go that route. And
they're kind of going back and forth whether they really want to extend Kyler Murray. So that, again, there's familiarity with the offense, and it wouldn't be exactly the same, but I get where you're going with it, and it does make sense. Let's take a look, Berea. You know, here's what the quarterback room would look like for the Browns right now. You see Tom Withers with it. So you got Brissett, Watson, and Joshua Dobbs. So it gives a different skill set for Kevin Stefanski in that room than the Browns are used to.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be more dynamic. They're going to do more with their bootleg game. You're going to have to respect them when they do a play fake and roll outside, because if you don't bite on it, eventually Watson is just going to take it on you for 17 yards untouched, run right out of bounds, get a first down, and keep the sticks moving. It's a different dynamic. And I think it's going to meld well with what Stefanski wants to do offensively.
Yeah, and you heard that defenses were going man against the Browns. You're not going to be able to do that because if you turn your back to cover the wide receivers, those quarterbacks are going to turn it into 12, 15-yard gains.
Yep, free money. They'll take it every time.
All right, before we go, last thing we're going to do here, Louis Riddick talked about Baker Mayfield. And keep in mind, this is from the perspective of a guy who was in personnel offices across the NFL. Here's Louis Riddick about Baker Mayfield.
What is the league saying to Baker Mayfield, Louis?
That your talent doesn't trump all the other things that you bring along with you right now. You're not one of those types of players that will overlook some of the things from a football character standpoint that could negatively affect our locker room. That's what the league is telling you. And any team that brings him in at this point really does need to sit down and talk to Baker about exactly what he would be bringing to the football team and what they expect from him from a leadership perspective. Look, we talk about this when we're talking about quarterback makeup with every single player, especially at that position, and how important it is. How important it is to have a positive impact on the players around you. Just not what you can do to make them better on the field as far as your throwing ability, but what do you do to inspire them to put in extra work and be someone that the rest of the team will follow and follow your example. And look, Baker right now, I don't think anybody is following his example. No one was following it in Cleveland. And look, there's enough circumstantial evidence from other players around the league that suggests that, look, not many other players want to follow his example right now.
And Casey, that's a problem for a quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes down to a phrase: be who you can afford to be. And Baker right now can't afford to be himself with the stuff he's put on tape, and just the media tour and the constantly playing the victim card. Like, being accountable as being part of being a leader, and he needs to embrace that if he wants another opportunity going forward.
Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily. As always, good stuff. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time, Casey.
Anytime. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Casey Kinnamon, make sure you read him, Dog Pound Daily. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. See you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Schedule guests Hayden Grove from The Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, and Ashley Bastock, also from The Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, tomorrow at 4. We'll see you then. Have a great night, everybody.